Guess it's my second. Oh. All right. So I'm just going to give it a couple of minutes, and we're also broadcasting on Facebook and YouTube today
Oh, sweet!
because we can, I guess. So that's what StreamYard allows.
Yes.
So, So how I'm on LinkedIn, but it doesn't. I don't see us yet. Let me just check. Maybe LinkedIn doesn't go live until. Oh, no. There we are. It's just a delay. Okay. Great. We are working. Oh, right. There's a delay. And there's automatic captions too, which is great.
Yes. We're good. We're live on LinkedIn. I see you here.
There's my kitchen. Awesome. So welcome to anybody who's already watching us. Feel free to say hi in the comments. I'm just going to give it like 30 more seconds because I see that we are at noon. And I want to make sure that we get to as many questions as possible. And now I hear the vacuum cleaner in the hallway. And yeah, apologies for any background noise. Thank you, Faria, for telling us that you can hear us. Okay. So welcome. Thanks, Faria. Hello. Hola, because Oscar is where today?
In Cancun.
In Cancun. Oh my goodness. I'm so jealous. I am not in Cancun. I'm in frigid Canada, and it is very, very frigid. And so I'm just living the heat vicariously through you today, Oscar. So if nothing...
We're just to be full, right? We're going to be full disclosure here. I'm actually in a McDonald's in Cancun, but if you got to be in a McDonald's, might as well be in Cancun, okay?
Yeah, yes, I love it. I'm not setting foot outside my house today to go to McDonald's or anywhere else. So if nothing else, I'm glad you're here just to bring me the heat through the screen of your computer. Thank you. So welcome, everyone. I think we're off to a great start. Welcome, everybody, to today's LinkedIn Live session. I'll just use a few introductory comments. We are here to talk about culturally relevant career tips to empower you. I am Rosie Young. I'm your host and your Jedi Journey Guide, and I'm here to help people with privilege dismantle systemic inequity while helping people without privilege survive it. Now, if you haven't heard the term Jedi before, it isn't just an awesome warrior in my all-time favorite movie. In this context, it's also an acronym that I use, which stands for Justice, Equity, Decolonization, and Inclusion. These are all causes which I coach people on and am deeply passionate about. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I am coming to you live from what we now know as Canada. It is actually the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Mississaugas of the Credit, as well as other nations indigenous to this land. And this is colonized land that is also known as Toronto, which is my home. And it is also the home still today to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people of Turtle Island. Now, I'm super excited that this is the first live in a series of lives on how to survive the job search and how to survive in your career. And it's all about supporting racialized people, also sometimes referred to as people of color. I prefer the term racialized, while they are looking for work. Hi, Will. Great to see you. Thank you, Faria. Please, people, keep throwing in your comments and saying hello to me and Oscar. We love to see you. Well, we can't actually see you, but we'd love to see your comments to know that you're there. And I want you to also keep engage with each other, engage with us. Let us know in the comments. Go ahead and type "me too" if this resonates with you. Okay. All the job advice that I've gotten in my life, from high school counselors to professional career coaches, have been from white people. Is that what you have found too? Let us know. Pop a "me too" or "yes, I get it." How about this? All the books that I've read on finding a job that you love, all the online articles and podcasts and HR handbooks on how to write a good resume that will get you noticed, almost all from white people. Do you relate to that? Oh, Walter, thank you. I see that you feel seen. I see you, and I see that you see me, so thank you. Now, I bet there are some of you out there thinking, Rosie, do you not like white people? Like, what's wrong with getting career advice from white people? Nothing wrong with that. And yes, I do like white people. Most of my mentors, people who've really helped me in my career, I've learned a lot from them. Nothing wrong with white people. That is not what I'm trying to say, or not. That's not what this is about. And in fact, we need to be learning from the people who are, frankly, controlling the job market. The problem I have is when I'm only getting advice from white people. So it's not about people being white or not white. It's about the diversity and relatability of the advice that I'm getting and that you're getting. Because no matter how much I've assimilated into white culture, and believe me, I'm pretty assimilated, I still don't feel like I quite fit in. And the techniques and the tips on what to say, how to act, when to be aggressive, when to be quiet, they don't feel natural, and they often conflict with my own cultural values that I learned from my Chinese family. So in a day and age when employers are starting to accept the idea that employees need the freedom to be themselves, I still feel like I can't fully be myself while following all the old ways of working. Okay. Thank you, Faria. Thank you, Walter. Yeah, it is very discouraging when you can't. You feel like you have to censor yourself sometimes. That's how I feel. But you have to play the game, and so you're learning the rules to play the game, but you still don't really belong on the game board. So here's where Oscar Garcia enters the picture. Literally, he's in this picture because he's live. Hola, Oscar. Hello. Nice to see you.
Hello.
Friends, I am so excited and honored to have Oscar join us today. If you are not already following him on LinkedIn, please go ahead and do that right now. I knew Oscar was awesome from day one when I read his profile and his tagline that says introvert-turned-international-speaker. I'm like, wait, what? Amazing. I'm an introvert. I need to know how to do that. And then his tagline also says that he provides culturally relevant career and leadership training. So that immediately piqued my interest. I mean, what is culturally relevant career and leadership training? That sounds like something I'm looking for. So how do I get some of that? Well, that's what Oscar is here to talk about today. Finally, a person who isn't white, has a successful career now, but didn't always. And he went from being an ESL student, English as a second language student, to an author and a prac trainer of over 20,000 professionals across 5 continents. I love his mission and his motto, which is to empower you so opportunities come to you. Isn't that what we all want? That's what he does every day as the founder and CEO, the Chief Empowerment Officer of Aspira Consulting. So Oscar, we are ready and willing to be empowered so opportunities come to us. But really quick, before we get going, I do want to try to make this as safe and open a conversation as possible, both for you and for you who are listening to us and tuning in to watch. There might be some sensitive or triggering topics that come up in our discussion. I might have just triggered you in some of my introduction. And so I commit to all of you, regardless of race, regardless of gender, you're all welcome here. And I am listening and sharing from a place of love and respect. Your story matters, Oscar. All of your stories matter, and your truth is welcome here. So all of you who are watching as well, same thing to you. You're welcome here. We want your questions. We want to answer your questions, which we'll do at the end after Oscar and I do a bit of Q&A. So please feel free to be honest while also being kind and courteous and respectful in the comments. Enter those questions. We're going to get to them. Thank you for being here today with us. And Oscar, welcome. And thank you for generously spending your time with us.
No, thank you, Rosie. Thank you for having me here. Listen, my friend, you are a pro at this. I think I'm going to hire you so you can help me with my career talk with OG. That was awesome. I love it. I love it. And but thank you very much. And you know what? You mentioned about my profile and what I say on my profile that drew attention to me. One of the things that I have found is somehow, some way, there's energy out there that we put out, and we're attracted, right, to certain type of energy, and I'm attracted to people that are going places, that are kicking butt, taking no prisoners, people like yourself. And so, thank you for the kind words, and for again the invitation to be here with you and everyone that's on here. Again, I mean, like we say in Spanish, mi casa es tu casa. My house is your house, so you're welcome here. Again, feel safe at home. And just like Rosie say, at the same time, be respectful and kind, okay, folks? Because otherwise, I'll shut the door to my house, okay? Kick you out. No.
We don't want to be shut out of Cancun, okay, Oscar? So, and thank you for saying that, and also thank you for saying that in Spanish. I want to talk about that too, because that is one of the things that I love about being dual culture, is when we can bring in that other culture, but not always. So, okay, I jumped ahead because first, like I said culture, but what even the word culture has been used in different terms. Like in a Western business setting, they talk about company culture, but I never felt like that was my culture. So when you say that you bring culturally relevant support, what does that mean to you, and what are you trying to do for the people you're supporting?
Yeah. So here's the thing. It is. Let me give you three things that I help people with, and then I'll give you a quick little story about this. So what I mean by culturally relevant career and leadership training is my goal is to help people accomplish three things. Number one is to embrace our journey. We all have a story to tell, right? And to teach us how to embrace that journey. And oftentimes that journey is painful. There's a lot of ups and downs, but to learn how to heal from that and embrace our journey. Number two is to value our identity, who we are. Right, for the longest time, and it tends to happen too in American culture, Western society, where the dominant culture puts down, minorities, and whether it's overtly, subtly, or whatever, and you grow up sort of like feeling less than. And you talked about that in your intro. And then the third part of it is the power of vulnerability. Go back to your point about company culture. Oftentimes in Western culture, and we see this too in movies and sports and in different aspects, is that that tough person, the person that can handle it, whatever obstacle is thrown their way, and even within Mexican culture, there is also that part of it that men don't cry, that type of stuff. But believe it or not, vulnerability is actually a strength. So those three things. Now, a quick story to highlight this is, and where I came up with this, I was my parents' translator since kindergarten until they passed away almost 7 years ago. And I remember going to doctor's appointments with my mom, and my mom was diabetic. And one day her doctor recommended she go and see a nutritionist to help her with her diet, eating, the type of foods to control her diabetes and so forth. And so there we are, my mom and I speaking to the dietitian. I'm translating, and the dietitian pulls out this pictures of different foods, and the foods around there were white bread, orange juice, very American type of a food, of a menu. And I'm looking at that, and I'm like, my mom and I'm thinking, it's like, wait a minute. And my mom eats tortillas. She does not eat, sliced bread. Okay. Orange juice. What are you talking about? Orange juice. She's over there drinking Coke. Okay. Like soda. And it's just like, it didn't make any sense. That menu, those instructions, that diet that the nutritionist guidance was giving my mother was not culturally relevant, because it was meaningless, right? I mean, we walked out of there and like, gosh, it was just a total waste of time. And guess what? My mom, and we never went back to the nutritionist, because like, they're not even helping, moms are like, it's just a waste of time. And so fast forward now to our career and leadership. And so many times when we, whether it's, gosh, it even starts in school, in high school, whether it's our high school counselor, or whether in college, the career services department, or oftentimes, as a professional, when we reach out to someone that does resume coaching or career coaching, or setting up your LinkedIn profile, many times these folks don't know how to provide and take our story and be able to translate our story in a way where we can then highlight, like I mentioned, our journey, our skill sets, our expertise in a way where we feel empowered and be able to communicate that so that we can attract those opportunities. So that's what I mean by being culturally, providing culturally relevant career leadership training.
Oscar, thank you for sharing that. You know what, my grandmother had Parkinson's, my mom has Parkinson's, and they're Chinese. It is hard. I really relate to that story about the medical care. I know that's a little bit off topic about career, but it's as ever when we experience marginalization or things that don't fit us, it is pervasive throughout all the different aspects of our life and society. It's definitely not just career. So you're totally right. From the foods we eat to how we live, like what makes us comfortable, what makes us not comfortable. Is there an example or a story maybe you can share about where you received culturally irrelevant advice in your career that you're like, it's not even going to help me? Like, kind of like with your mom, and well, that was a waste of time. Like, what's some stuff that hasn't helped you, but people think it's so well intended?
Right. Well, so here's the thing is that, like, for example, early in my career, meaning like my senior year in college, and you start looking for jobs. Are you going to graduate? So you got to go get a job. And I remember getting some help and putting together my resume. And so the ask you questions about, okay, so what have you been doing in college? Have you been volunteering? What kind of jobs have you had? What about summer jobs, et cetera, and so forth. And I would share the typical jobs that I would do during the summer, maybe working in retail or volunteering during the school year for this nonprofit and taking a leadership role. But here's the other piece of it, though, is that what I started doing, actually, since I was 11 years old in 5th grade, all the way until probably my early 30s, is every weekend I would help my parents with their meat business. My dad in Mexico was a butcher. And so for a long time, every weekend while I was in college, I would drive home and help my dad make chorizo, Mexican sausage. And then the next morning, I would wake up and go to the flea market and sell it. Well, it didn't even cross my mind to even talk about the experience of working in my parents' business. And also, I didn't share that, or I wasn't asked, like, hey, Oscar, you know what? Like, these things that you're telling me, like, to put in your resume, your resume is kind of looking a little skinny. Are you sure you haven't done anything else? In other words, to ask more deeper, probing questions. And see, when I look back at that experience of helping my parents with their business, I learned skills like, for example, a strong work ethic. Okay, I learned how to prioritize my schedule, how to balance, because there were times when, listen, I wanted to be hanging out at that fraternity party with my fraternity brothers, drinking upside down margaritas and getting drunk, and in college, but my little rear end had to go home for the weekend to help my parents, right? Or figure out how to write that midterm paper or study for that final. These are all skills that we need to use and we learn in terms of balancing our workload in a typical work environment in just life in general. And so that's an example of how when like today, when I talk to professionals in helping with their career, I go deeper and ask them, especially if they're my own. I'm like, listen, let me share my own story here. Is there anything like that? And it's amazing how people begin to be like, oh my gosh, first of all, I didn't even realize that I could change the narrative and look at that life experience and be able to translate it into a skill set and then be able to tell that story to that recruiter or that hiring manager.
This is gold. For all of you that are watching and listening, I hope you're writing this down, because that is such an excellent example, especially for people a little bit earlier in their career or just graduating, where they may not realize the experience that they have. And I think what you just shared also points out how these experiences become normalized, especially for immigrant families or families who don't have a lot. when they're starting out. And this is just, it's not, what do you mean? It's not career experience. This is just me helping the family because that's what we got to do. We're busting our butts and working hard and sacrificing.
Yes.
But that's not something that goes on the resume because it doesn't look and sound like what other people who don't have those backgrounds and experiences put on their resume.
Right.
And no one's
Right.
teaching you that other than you.
No,
Like,
no, no.
who tells you that?
No. And you know what, Rosie? Here's the thing too, is that when I look back at my life, I'm very blessed, very fortunate that I went to the top public university in the U.S., UC Berkeley. Okay, very difficult, very challenging to get in there into that university. But I'm going to tell you something. UC Berkeley or college professor never taught me how to overcome life challenges. You want to know who taught me how to overcome life challenges? It was a dishwasher and a housekeeper. That was my dad and my mom. Because the crap that they went through and how I have saw them overcome those life challenges, that is what has helped me overcome the life challenges and even be able to grow and succeed in my career. It wasn't that stupid. And then please don't, I'm not minimizing a college degree at all, but I'm just, emphasizing the point that we put so much emphasis on getting that college degree, that MBA, PhD. You know what? Listen, folks, okay, there's a bunch of knucklehead PhD, highly educated folks out there that are can't even, like, the minute poop hits the fan, they're like, what do I do? They start, Googling it. Dude, like, go find a mop and a broom and a dustpan and start cleaning that crap up, okay? That's what you need to do.
And because I know you were thinking words other than knucklehead and poop when you were sharing that story too. Just being real, folks, just being real. But this is streaming live everywhere, so we're toning it down today. You're totally right. And I think this is also where I go back to what I said at the beginning, where no, it's not that we're not trying to hate on anybody. I value education as well. There's huge value in that. But it's when we don't appreciate, again, the diversity of experiences and we're devaluing things that add so much value, like respect to the parents, respect to the people who came over here from another country or whatever they went through. They may not be direct immigrants, but whatever they went through in their lives, but it's not something that you get a degree for. It's not something you get a certification for, right? But it has value.
Yes. And what you said too, Rosie, you are so right. This is not about minimizing education or accomplishment, but rather it's highlighting the other part of our story, of our essence, of who we are, of our journey, that is so valuable. Because over the years, I mean, listen, I remember even going back to elementary school, I remember I was on the free and reduced lunch and I would go stand in that line and it was very, apparent that I was low income. And because I'm standing there in the line, and then over here at the benches were my white friends who had their lunches made by mom or dad or whoever, or mom or dad would bring them, something from McDonald's or wherever it is, right? And here I am. And I remember one day telling my mom, I said, because I didn't want to stand out like that. I wanted to fit in. That's the other thing. Many of us want to fit in, right? And I wanted to fit in with my white friends. And I remember telling my mom one day, I said, hey, Mom, do you think you can make me a sandwich? I don't want to stand in that line, that free and reduced lunch line. So sure enough, my mom made me the sandwich. And lunchtime comes around. I'm sitting at the lunch table. And I'm like super excited, fired up, because now I'm going to be able to fit in with all my white friends, right? I'm going to be able to actually have like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And the first clue that I had that this was not quite going to be like I thought was when I opened my lunch bag. My mom had packed my sandwich in the long plastic sandwich bag. Okay, not a regular, not even a brown bag, let alone a lunch bag with Superman on it back then. Okay, and I go, okay, whatever. So then I reach into the bag to grab my peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Oh, no.
And then I pull it out and I look at it, and in between the two slices of bread were whole beans. Now, as Mexicans, we eat a lot of beans, okay? We love beans, okay? And I look at that sandwich and I'm like, oh my gosh, my mom, this is not a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. This is like a whole bean sandwich. I was so embarrassed. I grabbed that sandwich, threw it back in the bag, wrapped that bag around the sandwich, and I tossed the sandwich in the garbage. And I remember the yard duty coming up to me, and she's like, "What's the matter, Oscar? Aren't you hungry?" I'm like, "No, I'm not hungry." I mean, damn right I was starving, okay? But I was so embarrassed. And today, folks, listen, man, I can survive on just bean tacos, okay, every day, okay? So if you want to send me some bean tacos, well, no, you don't need to send me because I'm in Mexico, okay? So send your bean tacos, okay? But that's my point about, just, these stories and how back then, and the thing is too, that even as professionals today, we don't value our story. I see so many examples on LinkedIn where people start off a post and say, "I don't post anything personal. This is a personal story." I'm like, dude, like, you're a human being. Like, do you think that no one goes through crap? No one goes through challenges? My last 10 years, I've gone through crap. Okay, I have like a full yard of crap that I've been through. Okay, but that's the thing where even as professionals, again, we minimize them, or we have to like apologize. And then you have the cultural aspect of it, the minority, and it's like even less.
Folks, what do you think about what Oscar's saying? Like, are you relating to this? Because I'm like, yes, the lunch story, yes, the being embarrassed, which I'm ashamed now of how I used to be embarrassed about my parents because I thought that I was better than them because I had assimilated. Like, my English is better than their English. Oh, it's so embarrassing when mom and dad come and they don't sound the same as the other people's parents, and it's all about trying to fit in and be accepted in the Western way wherever we're living, as you said. Faria, thanks for sharing about the additional burden you feel as a Muslim woman of color as well. And we haven't even talked about religion, but that is another important aspect where it's not just a religion that is on a certain day of the week. It is a part of our lives, and yet it doesn't necessarily fit in the workplace when the workplace is not Muslim. It is still primarily Christian, and that's a whole other form of discrimination and marginalization of what's important to you. Thanks for pointing that out. Yeah. Thanks, Walter. Yes, absolutely. I'm glad this is resonating. Oscar, I wonder, because going back to what you said at the beginning, where you brought in a little bit of Spanglish. And for any of you, if you haven't watched Oscar's lives before, check it out. Not only is it incredibly useful information because he talks about this and so much more, but I also love that you can engage with your audience and just in general, feel free to use Spanish and use terms that, as a non-Spanish speaker and someone who isn't Latina by background, I won't necessarily understand. But I actually really appreciate that because that's the whole point. Is people from the same culture will understand without having to do a whole explanation. And that's also what it is in the US and Canada, where there's a lot of in-jokes that if you're not from there, you won't understand, but you're expected to understand. So I just, how did you get to the point of maybe being comfortable? Because that's also where I felt embarrassed. Now it's exotic, so it's kind of okay to use different languages. Oh, people want to learn Chinese words or they want to learn Spanish words, right? And they butcher them. But it's in a way, it's like, oh, it's cute, it's nice. But I also don't feel like they really appreciate the true meaning behind things. So how do you marry the fact that you do speak two languages and you can't say the same things? And when is it okay to use Spanglish? When is it not okay? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Rosie. So here's the thing: is that first off, it's who I am. It's I'm bicultural. I was born in California. Parents from Mexico. I lived my first 5 years in Mexico. And growing up, my dad was very strict with my younger brother and I in terms of speaking Spanish. So we grew up speaking Spanish at home and keeping the Spanish language. And as I got more comfortable with who I am and my identity, what I realized is that it's almost like there's three cultures in me. So there's like you, right? I can hang and roll in the American culture, corporate culture, et cetera, and so forth. I can be around, and I have been around a room full of white people. I'm the only minority there. I can also hang out with Mexicans, and I mean, my family and friends, and I mean, hello, right now I'm in Mexico, but there's also the third group, and that is those of us that again that are cultural, and where it is customary to blend in the two cultures, the two languages, the English and the Spanish. And so really what for me, it's like I've grown up with the ability to oops, sorry, give me 1 second. I think
Yep. I think we lost
give me
you.
1 second. Yeah, give me 1 second. Let me
Yep.
I don't know what happened here to the light or the camera. Sorry folks. Little
All good.
challenges. There we go.
All good.
And then
Oh, not quite yet. You can look at me while Oscar.
Okay, there we go.
He's back.
That-
All right, there we go.
I don't know what happened. But anyways,
All good.
So I've grown up with these three cultures, I guess we want to call them that. And for me, it's just become now automatic that it's just me. I roll with it. I say it, and if someone doesn't understand, well, ask me questions, okay? Or if you do understand it, well, then awesome. We'll go for it. But yeah, I just know now. It's like driving a stick shift. After a while, you get to know how to drive it. You can be eating your hamburger and shifting gears and talking on the phone and all that type of stuff. So yeah, it's just part of who I am now.
No, I love it. And I'm glad that you're at that place, because I think that is part of being the real you and bringing your whole self to wherever you are. And it's, I still remember, how long have I been working now? Over 20 years. But I still remember the days in school as well and at work where if there happened to be, say, other Chinese people there, and we all spoke Cantonese. Not that I'm mostly anglicized anyhow, so it's not like I would often do it. But just sometimes there's the words that don't translate into English, and people know what it means. And I was always afraid, I think, that people would look at me like I've seen them say to other people, "Speak English," right? Like it's offensive for you to be speaking in your own language, or that somehow you're excluding people who don't speak the language other than English, while people who don't speak English very well are feeling excluded all the time. And so it's, again, I think a point where if you're not sure how to feel, or if people are around you speaking their native tongue, their mother tongue that isn't English, I actually think it's great, because it actually gets your ears used to different intonations, different words. It actually will help, even if you don't understand what the meaning of the words are. That's how I can get used to people speaking with accents, because you just get used to hearing something different than English, and it helps to understand when they are speaking English as well, because the sounds don't sound as unfamiliar. And I think it invites conversation. So I'm glad that you said that you're open to questions where it's like, oh, what does that mean, Oscar? And if you know what, if I can pick up some Spanish just from listening to you, I count that as a plus. So
Right.
I'm glad that you're so free with that.
Yes. Well, and the part of it too, the reason why I'm so free is there's also the part of it too where sometimes we get offended easily because someone of another culture, says something or says it differently or wrong or whatever, and we're kind of and so where I come from with that, or what my perspective is that, first of all, I don't believe in being politically correct. I don't. What I believe in is being polite and compassionate. Polite and compassionate. PC. Polite and compassionate, because we all make mistakes. I don't have all the answers. I might, right? You might say something, Rosie, in Chinese or whatever, and I might try to say it, and I might say it the wrong way. But my intent isn't to be malicious and make fun of you. It's just like, oh, okay, I didn't know. Like, educate me, right? Now, here's the thing, folks. Okay, once I've educated you, if you still continue to make that mistake, better watch out, okay? Because I'm going to slap you over the head, okay? So, all right. So, I think It goes back to creating that safe space and realizing, or understand that not everyone's out to get you, and not everyone's out to get you.
I just want to highlight something that Faria put in the comments. And I hope it's okay, Faria, for me to show this, because I think everybody can see it anyway in the comments. But just on that point about third culture and language, Yeah. So I'm
Yeah.
really glad that you said this, Maria. So for the folks who can't see this right now, it says that one of the things that really bothers her is what her mother went through when her mom was just trying to help by translating from Bengali to English, but yet one of the coworkers was like, "Don't." You can't speak that because not everybody does. And yeah, not everybody does
Yeah.
speak Bengali, but also not everybody speaks English. So
Right.
I really hope that people can I think question the well why are we feeling that way if their instant reaction, and I can understand it sometimes, it's how we all feel when we don't understand something, we're hearing something different or foreign, but why does it bother you so much, and why do you think the person's doing it? Maybe there's this also fear I've heard. Sorry, I didn't mean to spend so much time on language, but it occurs to me now too that people I think are also sometimes afraid, oh, they must be talking behind my back or they're saying something
Yep.
about me. And that's why they have to
Yes.
resort to their other language. And it's like, folks, it's not always about you. It may just be that they are sharing something and they want to share it in something that they feel the most comfortable with. Because if you feel the
Yeah.
most comfortable with English, that's what you want to speak. And you go to a foreign country, guess what? You're going to want to speak English even though you're in a foreign country where English is not the native tongue, right? So
Right. Right.
I think question some assumptions maybe would be my best advice to help
Yeah.
people get over that.
Yeah, and Rosie, and Brad, thank you for sharing this because I've experienced this. I saw this also with my parents too as well.
Mm,
I think part of it is I think historical, meaning um, there's been periods of times, at least in the U.S. I'm speaking in the U.S., where in historical times where there's been a lot more
mhm.
discrimination and et cetera and so forth. But what I was going to say though, Rosie, is one thing that I've observed while being here in Mexico is, like, for example, in Cancun, a, a lot of the workers, the Mexicans that are here working, speak English, and they come up and there's signs in English, and they come up to you, and they, if they believe that you are an American, they'll start speaking to you in English. And yet in the U.S., we have this issue with,
Mm,
like, speak English, and over here in Mexico, they're like, that doesn't even cross their mind. It's just like,
yeah.
when I look at it is, I put my business hat on, is that you serve your customers, you meet your customers where they're at, right?
Mm,
And yeah, it's just fascinating because I don't ever get the experience that a Mexican here will say to an American, speak Spanish here in
right.
Mexico.
Right.
Speak Spanish here in
Yes.
Mexico. I
Yes.
no.
Yes. Oh, my mind is going in certain places, but good point. I wonder if that's also something of a cultural thing because I can think of other countries that are European, primarily white, um, that do speak languages other than English. And they would say, speak my language, whatever it is, speak French, speak German, like speak something other than English. And they feel like they could demand that. I'm trying not to generalize, but I have been to these other countries and that is how I feel. It's like, well, why do I have to speak English to you? Why don't you speak? And I accept that because, like, yeah, I'm visiting your country. But you're
Mhm.
right. I've gone to Mexico several times and I never am told, why don't you speak Spanish? Right? They try to cater to me. Okay, I really want to ask you this because I find that a lot of cultures, frankly, if we're not white, wherever we are in the world, we've probably been colonized, right? Because that is how it has happened globally. And the term Asian covers huge, vast number of different countries, different cultures. But I do find that there is some similarities around shame and being very deferential to others, being very humble. I think sometimes to our own detriment. And
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
struggled with this in
Mhm.
business because I feel like to succeed, we're taught in Western culture to be aggressive and to ask for what you want
Yes.
and to
Yes.
talk about all your accomplishments and sell yourself and promote
Yes.
yourself. But growing up as a kid, because that was our way, and at least in my family, it's like, oh no, Rosie, she's whatever. That A was really terrible. So your daughter got an A plus. Like that's so much better, right? That's how I grew up. So this also there's this third culture that we live in. I love that point that you made. I'm not 100% Chinese. I'm not 100% Canadian. I'm Canadian Chinese, and that's its own culture in a certain way, right?
Mhm. Yes.
How did you navigate, or maybe what advice do you have for people navigating when my culture might not be to what I feel like bragging about myself, and yet that's what I seem to need to do to get ahead?
Yeah. So first off, um, the the humility is a positive trait, but I think, and you said something earlier, is that you said that it can be to a detriment. I think any trait, value to one extreme or the other, there's detriments, there's pros and cons, right? Um, I grew up too. My dad would say, "Hey, don't brag. Let your work, let your actions speak louder." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, that kind of makes sense." But there's also a time and a place when we do need to brag. And from a career standpoint, I tell people, listen, you got to brag on that cover letter, you got to brag on that resume, you got to brag on your LinkedIn profile. You need to let the world know that you are a badass, because if you don't in those situations, then you're going to get passed over. It's going to take longer for you to move up in the corporate ladder, et cetera, and so forth. And so what I believe that it comes down to is understanding, and to also to go back to something you said earlier, is the corporate game. Understand what the rules are, what how to play the game, this corporate game, and know when it is that you need to um, let folks know the skill sets, the amazing work that you do. Now, one of the things, and this is on LinkedIn, one of the things that I have learned to do in terms of promoting myself and the work that I do on LinkedIn, without coming across like that, like it's just bragging, and just letting the world know, this and that, is I use what is called the boomerang effect. Now,
Hmm.
if you know how to throw a boomerang correctly, the boomerang goes away from you and then it comes back to you. And so the boomerang effect, specifically, is where, let's say, for example, like in my case, I'll use myself as an example. I do a talk like this one. Okay, so you invite me here, and we're on LinkedIn Live, and I want to share a little snippet about this. So the way I would write it and talk about it is, I would highlight you first, the work that you do, the points, that you cover, et cetera, and so forth, and maybe talk about, two or three other points about what it is that I covered, and and then and tell how honored it is that I am. But I would lead by highlighting you, the work that you do, and then I would end with, again, my points that I cover, a little story. What most people do is they talk about themselves first.
Hmm.
I'm so honored that I was on Rosie's. Well, listen, knucklehead, what does that got to do with me as your reader? Okay, that you're on. I don't give a crap that you're honored. I want to know what's in it for me, right? And
Hmm.
then for you, Rosie, if I highlight you, you're going to feel very special, as you should be, because you are. You're like, wow, this is kind of cool. See,
Hmm.
folks, and this is not rocket science. It's boomerang effect. It's not, folks. It's things that most of our cultures teach us. Right? Highlight
Yeah.
other people, and
Yeah.
that's a way where we can be humble, but we can kick some ass too. Be humble and be a butt kicker.
Again, just pure gold. Uh, okay. You know what? I do want to say, I think you're right that a lot of cultures teach that, but I feel like that gets lost in capitalism, right? Because it is all about how can I get ahead? How can I be number one? And
Yeah.
so thank you for bringing this back to it's okay to highlight. Not only is it okay, but I think it comes naturally to most of us. Like a lot of us, I think, are very altruistic and generous. And especially when we're talking about
Yes.
equity, diversity, and inclusion work, people who care about that are already caring about other people. So you're just telling us basically to be ourselves, be more
Yes.
ourselves, right?
Yes. Yes. Oh my God. You guys. I mean, like, here's the thing is that people, like when it comes to networking, that's another area that many of us are afraid we don't know, especially like you and I, Rosie, were introverts, right? We're like, oh my god, networking tends to have a negative connotation, and what I realized is that in Latino culture and many other culture, Asian culture, and many other cultures, it's about relationship first, business second. Relationship first, business second. But you get into the corporate world and it's business first. And if a relationship ever happens, oh well, that's great. And it's like, no, folks, we need to come back and stay true to what our culture teaches us: that relationship first, then business. I remember back in 2019 when I went to Panama to do a week-long series of trainings, and I got done doing my first workshop, and this gentleman comes up and introduces himself and says hello, etc., and so forth. And turns out that he is Mexican living in Panama, and he said to me, he said, "Hey, I would love to invite you to my house tonight, you and your team, for dinner." A complete stranger. Imagine in the U.S. that Rosie, you do a talk and someone comes up to you and says, "Hey, Rosie, I love your talk. Come over to my house for dinner." That's weird.
Mm-hmm.
But in Latino culture, that's not weird.
Yeah.
That is kindness. That is showing that I trust you and I welcome you to my most sacred sanctuary inside my home.
Yeah.
And so, folks, whatever you do, like Rosie said, be yourself. Know that the cultural values that we have are awesome, and they will continue to help us move ahead. All we need to do is just maybe add a little bit of ketchup to that taco. Okay.
There's another sauce that you mentioned me to before too that I can't remember, but is like, what is the sauce that is very commonly used in?
I think you're talking about the tahini.
Yes, the tahine.
Yeah.
Yes, we need to put some more tahine in what we're eating in that bean sandwich. Yes. Oh, okay. Folks, I don't see a lot of questions right now, but I do want to leave time for questions. So I'm going to wrap up my sort of one-on-one with Oscar very shortly. Feel free to drop those in the comments. I think that's the only way that we can actually see and answer your questions. But just to wrap up our sort of the talk part of this before we go to the questions, Oscar, I'm wondering if you could just kind of give us some parting advice or parting last words. Maybe first to employers, if they aren't from dual cultures or triple cultures, but they want to be culturally relevant. How can they do that when they only have one culture?
Yeah. So listen, folks, I'm very simple, very practical. Okay. There's more to this answer than what I can give right now. But listen, okay. If you keep having lunch, okay, at that same Starbucks, maybe you need to go to the other side of the road and go hang out and eat, boba tea, or maybe you need to have, café de olla. Maybe you just need to start going to places where people from other cultures are hanging out so that you can get exposed to it. Listen, even for me being Mexican, I mean, this is the first time that I've been to Cancun. I mean, this is a different part, just like in the U.S. U.S. is different. West Coast from East Coast, South, North, East, there's differences. And so expose yourself to different cultures, different people, different ideas, right? Maybe start following on social media. Some people start following people like Rosie or other people out there, their content, right? So that you can begin to understand and begin to value these differences. I mean, of course, the hiring practices and, how we do the outreach and what schools or colleges of course, you're going to need to do that. But I just want to give you something just very practical that you can do, and especially at the leadership level, because when you are at the leadership level, you are the heart of your organization. The rest of your team will follow your lead. So that's what I recommend for employers.
Awesome. Thank you. Hope you guys wrote that down. And changing lenses, which is, it's my podcast, it's what I'm all about. I call it changing lenses because I believe empathy and understanding and inclusion comes when we can take off the default filters that we all come with, how we see the world, how we see people, and can see people differently. So I wonder, as you're, as we're ending this amazing, wonderful, joyful conversation today, how do you really want us? What's your call out to us, Oscar, to change our lenses and to see people with different cultures, people who are racialized, people who are immigrants? How can we see them differently going forward?
Yeah. So first off, what I recommend is that I want you to see your journey differently. See, here's the thing: is that, and there was a comment. I think Will earlier made a comment about that we don't want to stand out, and you're right. Many of us don't. We grew up with that. I grew up being told that I was a minority, and that being a minority tends to have a negative connotation. First generation, first to graduate from college, low income, language, et cetera, and so forth. Okay, we talked about some of those things. But here's the thing, folks, is when I got into the corporate world, and I was in team meetings, and we started talking about how can we beat the competition. We talked about how are we different from the competition. What is be different? How can our product? In other words, the word different kept coming up, and then all of a sudden, I just reflected in my childhood and my life growing up, and I'm like, wait a minute, growing up, different had a negative connotation. I was told that I was different, and that was a bad thing. And now I'm in the corporate world, and I'm hearing that being different is a powerful thing. I'm like, screw this. I have been groomed to kick ass in life because I've been different the entire time. I've been a minority, and I am damn proud of being a minority, because anyone that's ever accomplished anything of significance is a minority. It's only a small percentage. Rosie, how many people did you not invite to it? A bunch, but there's only a small percentage that attended. The minority, the people that are ready and needed to hear this. That's why I love all of you guys that are on here, okay? Because we're a minority, okay? Damn right, okay? Wear that badge. Stand out, okay? Stand out. So that's where we start. First, start with yourself and valuing your journey. Once you value your journey, what happens is there's a lot of self-awareness that begins to happen, right? We begin to refine a position of value, of strength, of pride. And when we do that, then to ourselves, we then begin to look at other people with that different lens that you talk about, where you now look at people at, if we were to use a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being the highest, 0 being the lowest, now we begin to look at people with 10s on their forehead, like John Maxwell, one of my favorite authors, talks about. You look at people up here instead of like, you need to prove yourself that you're worthy. No, everyone's worthy. That's what I recommend.
Folks, did I not tell you that Oscar was going to empower us today? Like, if we are not coming away from this feeling like a little bit taller in our boots or whatever, where in Canada I'm wearing boots. If we're not walking away feeling a little bit taller, wow, listen to this again. This is just amazing. Thank you for sending in some questions. I'm going to get to that right next, as soon as I just let you know a few housekeeping things. So for everybody in our live audience, if you missed some parts of this, or maybe the beginning, or if you heard something really meaningful and you're like, oh, can you go back and say that again? Don't worry, we got you. This is being recorded. As far as I know, I hope to goodness it's being recorded. It should just come up as soon as our live ends, and you should be able to rewatch this on LinkedIn. I'll also link to it on my website and on YouTube, because it's broadcasting in a few different places. So I'm also going to be releasing this on my podcast in full audio with transcript and show notes, so that you'll get notes and summaries and the whole, like everything written out. And that will be probably next month. But if you want to make sure you don't miss that, subscribe to my podcast. It's called Changing Lenses. It's on all the major podcast platforms. And you could also subscribe to my newsletter from my website. Where is my website? Here it is. And you will then be notified because I also let people know when it comes out. So that's how you can make sure you don't miss it. We'll have all of that for you, and you can rewatch and take notes and read the transcript as much as you want, because I know people learn in different ways. And Oscar, if people can't get enough of you, because I know I can't, is there a way that they can also contact you and follow you and learn more from you?
Yes. I don't know if you have it up right now. I can't put it on the chat, but
yeah,
you can follow, go to, well, first of all, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Oscar Garcia at Aspira Consulting. But then also, as you can see across the screen on the bottom, that's our website. Feel free to reach out. I do also have a podcast called Career Talk with OG as well. So a lot of great information that's shared there as well. So those are some ways.
Awesome. Thank you. Yes. OG, the original. OG. OG, the OG. Yes. Go check out his podcast as well. I tried to put it in the comments. I don't know if it came up, but we'll don't worry, folks. Again, I'll also add all the links after this, and I'll link directly to Oscar's podcast as well, so you could see it. Oh, yeah, it's not. Sorry, it's weird. It's not coming out properly. But okay, we've got a few questions, so let me get to those. And I'm going to bring them up on screen as well. Wow, thanks, folks. You're being so engaging. It really makes us feel good, because then we were kind of broadcasting into the void. Oscar and I can see each other, but nothing else. So here's one question. We have a LinkedIn user asking, what are some examples of corporate policies that we should challenge that will make it more culturally relevant? Interesting question. What do you think, Oscar?
Yeah, whoa, that's kind of a broad question here.
Yeah.
But so here's, again, coming back, because I'm very practical, okay, is that one of the things that I would challenge is where your company is looking for talent. It's just it's human nature, right? We tend to go to places that we are familiar, or groups that we're familiar with, but I would encourage or challenge that your company expand its recruiting efforts. Maybe, for example, there is in the U.S. Hispanic serving institutions. There's also
Oscar, sorry, you're breaking up a little bit. Can you just because I don't want people to miss that institution you mentioned.
Yeah, am I back? Am I back?
Oh, not quite yet. You were kind of in and out before, but I know you'll come back as you always do before. Okay, I think you're back. You're back. Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. What I was mentioning is one example is recruiting from Hispanic serving institutions. These are colleges or universities in the U.S. that at least 25% of the student body is Hispanic. There's also historically Black colleges and universities as well. Those are just some examples, okay? There's also professional associations that you can connect with and do some recruiting. So that's one policy that I would encourage people to challenge.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Oscar. And if you're in Canada as well, I know that similar, like people have been asking the questions, where can we go to find talent from diverse backgrounds? I would add to that it's not just about finding them, it's about attracting them. So people, like the same people that are, in the institutions or in the places that Oscar's mentioned, they're also on LinkedIn. They're also on Indeed, like all the usual places. They're at the recruiting firms. So how are you attracting them? By creating a company culture that invites and welcomes a variety of cultures. And maybe to that point as well, I'll add that I guess you could say it's a corporate policy, but Lunar New Year is coming up. And there are lots of different festivals. There's Diwali, there is Eid, if you're Muslim, like I know Faria is Muslim. And these are things that are not tied to the whatever months, like Black History Month or Asian Heritage Month or, Hispanic Heritage Month. Like, great, there's all these months, but the things that actually mean something to people from those countries or those cultures, find out what those are and you give them the day off. Like if I was in Hong Kong or China, we'd have a week off for Lunar New Year, right? So I'm not saying you need to give a whole week, but I think we could really expand our definition of what a paid holiday is. And I know this is also this is challenging because it also involves dollars when we're talking about, paid time off. But since you asked the question, I'll put that out there.
Yes,
All right.
yes, that's great.
I'm going to go to a question now from Faria. How would you go about trying to respect Western work culture and participating while still staying true to your values? Ah, yes. This is a great question. I have some Muslim friends who've had this. So Faria says she's a Muslim. She doesn't drink, but drinking is a big social thing after work. Yes, it is. That's what the people love, especially if you're in banking or financial. What do you think about that, Oscar? How can in that example as mine?
Yeah, this is so one thing, Maria, is there's two ideas that come to my mind. One is look at potentially starting here in the U.S. We call it employee resource group, okay, but maybe start off with a small group of employees at your company that share the similar culture or interest in knowing about the Muslim culture. Because once you start forming this group, it's a support group, and it can lead to expanding that into changing some policies, et cetera, creating some events and so forth. The other piece of it too is in terms of like feeling awkward. See, here's the thing: is that I know some people that that also don't drink, not because of their religion or anything like that. They just don't drink, and so what they do is they walk around with a cup that has soda with a lime in it. That's it, and it just you can't tell that there's no alcohol or anything like that, and that's what they do, and they're hanging out there, socializing. I think more the part though is that if you're feeling uncomfortable or awkward, I'm kind of guessing that there is some other elements that are going on here. Maybe some conversations where maybe people know that you don't drink, and so they're looking at you or making you feel awkward. And I think at that point, maybe it is time. If that's the case, it's almost kind of becoming more of this culture, right? That drinking is accepted, and anyone that doesn't drink, you're the outsider, you're the outcast. And I think if that's the case, then maybe it's time to talk to your manager or maybe talk to HR, not from a position of like they're making me, they're bad people or anything, but it's like, hey, this is me, this is how I feel, and I don't feel welcome. What can you recommend? What are some things that we can do as a company here to be more inclusive?
I love that. And I think that sort of addresses Faria's other question too, about how to start the conversations when we're talking about ERGs or, it's in some ways, I know it's uncomfortable to do that, especially when everybody around you is drinking or whatever the majority is doing that you're the minority in.
Yeah.
But I think to try as much as possible, I think to do what you said earlier, also just to feel like you could be yourself and be like, no thanks, I don't drink, and they don't have to know why. If you feel comfortable, you can share it, but I think because there's still that stigma. It's like there's so much attached to being Muslim beyond just the not drinking, that maybe that's also that discomfort. But as much as possible, Faria, I'd encourage you, like, no, actually I don't believe in drinking. I don't need to drink but I'd like to go and have a good time, and I don't need to drink for that, and to kind of make it as much matter of fact as possible versus an explanation. Because I feel that's also where a lot of times, like, well, you don't do what the majority does. Justify that. Like, explain yourself. You don't need to. You can explain yourself as much as you want, but if you just treat it as, no, this is the norm, actually. Just because you're the majority, that doesn't make it the norm. This is my norm, and I'm okay with that.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Be empowered, like Oscar says. Okay, I think there was one more question that we couldn't get to, but we're up in time, and I really want to let Oscar. He's a very busy person and needs to do his stuff too. So feel free to message me though if there's anything else that we didn't get to you really want to talk about. I forgot to say that of course I'm on LinkedIn because I'm broadcasting there right now. So connect with me, message me. Love to hear your questions. Love to hear your feedback too, because we've got 3 other sessions coming up. And it's all going to be related to our careers and how do we empower people and become more equitable, diverse, and inclusive. So thank you, Oscar, for being here today. It was a joy for me. I hope it was a joy for everybody who's watching. You just exude energy, and I don't know how you're an introvert, but yes, this is what amazes me. Thank you for coming here and being with us today.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Have a great rest of your week.
And we did put up, let me make sure I put up again. So I think, yeah, Oscar's contact is there. We both care very deeply about supporting people in their careers in different ways. You can see all of the different ways that Oscar supports people on aspiraconsulting.com. Let us know. Links are also in our bios. I hope you do check out his podcast. He's got lots more to offer than just what we were able to cover in this very short time today. And I hope you tune in next week when I will be featuring the amazing Sin Yi Yap for more career advice, this time specifically about how we are gatekeepers around who we let into our places, both our countries from an immigration and then into our workplaces, because she's going through this really difficult U.S. immigration stuff right now. And she's a highly valuable worker, but not getting in. So we're going to talk about that next week. Make sure you tune in. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We're so honored that you came and spent time with us today.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.